My wife's brother kept running our marriage, so I gave her an ultimatum, and he lost it. My wife's brother has been running our marriage like he's the third person in it, and I've hit my limit. We've been married 3 years, and she still treats him like her main decision maker. She tells him everything, our arguments, our plans, even what movie we'll watch. If I leave dishes in the sink, she calls him to vent. If we can't agree on dinner, she calls him so he can pressure me into her choice. The wild part is she asks his permission to do normal things with me. Last Tuesday, I booked our favorite Italian place for 9 p.m. She called him at 6:30, like it's a habit, and he said 9 was too late to eat. She canceled our reservation without asking me. I was standing there ready to go, and she just said, "He's right," and went back to her phone. Then there's his bedtime rule. Every night at 10:30, he calls and tells her it's time to sleep. Doesn't matter if we're halfway through a movie or finally talking about something important. Sometimes she sets an alarm for 10:25 so she won't miss his call. If we're out, she steps away to answer, then comes back and says we have to leave right now. When that call hits, she drops everything and walks to bed. The first few months I kept confronting her. I'd say, "This isn't healthy," and she wouldn't even argue back. She'd call him and ask him to explain why it's fine, then come back repeating his reasons word for word. One time I got her to promise she'd tell him no. She called him, got quiet, came back, and started yelling at me for trying to control her. It felt like he was using her mouth to fight me. Looking back, the signs were there before we got married. I planned a weekend away when we were dating. She smiled and said, "I need to check with my brother." I laughed because I thought she was messing with me. She wasn't. She called him right in front of me and asked if she was allowed to go. He said no, called it unsafe, and that was the end of it. She shrugged and said it didn't matter what she wanted. He also used to call during our dates, sometimes 3 or 4 times in one night, just to check on her. I told myself it would calm down after marriage. It got worse. He even tried to set her lunchtime. Everything finally exploded on our 3rd anniversary. I planned a full night for us. Dinner at the restaurant from our first date, then a room at a small bed and breakfast outside town. I got off work early to surprise her. I walked into an empty house. I called her, and she picked up and said, casual as anything, "I'm out with my brother. He had a rough day." I said, "It's our anniversary." She went quiet, then said, "Oh, I forgot." She came home around 10 p.m., acting like I should just be fine. I told her how hurt I was. She got defensive fast and said her brother needed her and I should understand. We started arguing, and it kept getting louder. I told her I was done being second place. I told her I was tired of our marriage being run by someone who wasn't in it. Instead of talking to me, she walked into the next room and called him. I could hear her telling him I was unreasonable and that I didn't respect their special bond. That's when I snapped. I walked in, took the phone from her hand, and told him to stop meddling in our marriage. I told him he doesn't get to set rules for my wife and my home. He started screaming through the phone, calling me jealous and saying I was trying to split them up. My wife just stood there staring at the floor. The next day he showed up at our house. He didn't knock. He just opened the door and walked in. That's when I realized my wife had given him a key without telling me. He started yelling the second he saw me, saying I was manipulating her and turning her against family. I told him to leave. He stepped closer and kept shouting. My wife stood behind him silent. I looked at her and said, "I'm done living like this." I told her she had to choose. Either her brother respects our marriage and backs off, or I'm leaving. For a second it was quiet, like everyone was waiting for her to speak. Then her brother exploded. He got right in my face and shoved his finger into my chest. I didn't move. He shoved me hard with both hands. I hit the wall and my shoulder slammed into the corner. Pain shot down my arm and I had to catch my breath. My wife gasped, but she still didn't stop him. Our neighbor must have heard the yelling because he banged on the door and yelled that he was calling the police. Sirens showed up fast. The officers walked in while her brother was still ranting. They asked what happened, and my neighbor told them he saw me get shoved into the wall. One officer looked at my shoulder, and the other told him to turn around. They put him in handcuffs right there in our living room and led him outside. My wife just stood frozen in the doorway as the lights flashed through the window. Now everyone's saying my ultimatum was cruel. Was I wrong to do it?